this is the bit of the show that I've really been looking forward to. A warm welcome to Scarlett the Beagle. Scarlett the Beagle is the ambassador, the international ambassador for a fantastic organisation called the Beagle Freedom Project. And what this organisation does is it tries to release to beagles and dogs that are bred especially to be experimented on. Now, one of my guests here, Shannon Keith, from the American side of the organisation, is a genuine heroine because in America, I believe in the state of Virginia, wasn't it, you Shannon, successfully managed to free 4,000 beagles from these hellhole canine concentration camps. So in America, they recognise that what people like you are doing is right and moral. Unfortunately, in Britain, we still have these hellholes, these canine concentration camps. There's one up near Huntingdon where what they do, just so as you know, so if you have a look at poor little Scarlett there, well, she's not poor little Scarlett anymore, they will breed a lovely dog like Scarlett for 16 weeks. They get thousands of pounds to do this. They put paper cups over their faces so they know how to take gas masks. They put pins in them so they accept. They're used to accepting injections because all that's going to happen to them after 16 weeks is they'll be put into crates, they'll be taken to laboratories and experimented upon. This is what happened to Scarlett. Janie, who has taken Scarlett in, just quickly explain how you managed to free Scarlett from what I would say is literally a fate worse than death. Yes. Tell us what happened.
Yes, well, this beautiful lady sitting next to me freed Scarlett, saved her life. The Beagle Freedom Project saved her life. We've recently found out that due to her tattoo, Shannon was able to tell me that Scarlett was bred in the biggest puppy factory breeding place in the United States, Marshall Bioresources. And she was flown to a Hungarian toxicology lab. And Shannon negotiated their release.
Which, an honour to have you here, Scarlett. She seems fairly underwhelmed. Obviously, I've spoken to you before. We've had Scarlett on the show before, but never in person, so it's great to have her here. Special dispensation. We don't have too many animals in this building, but for VIP guests, it is allowed. Shannon Keith, welcome to Britain. What are you doing here? And tell us about how you managed to save, well, not only Scarlett, but 4,000 beagles were summarily released in Virginia because of your fine work. Tell us how you did that.
Well, thank you for having me on the show, and I love it here. Scarlett, we're so happy to have her here and free. It's not easy to negotiate with laboratories. As Janie was saying, she's a Marshall Beagle. That's the same as MBR Acres here. And so we have opened a branch here to do this very same thing, to negotiate the release of beagles and other dogs and animals to make sure that they have a second chance at life, and also to initiate legislation to end the needless suffering and torture of animals so that they no longer have to endure these things because it is absolutely unnecessary, and to end the testing of animals, period.
So in America, or certainly in Virginia, thanks to your great work, they've seen the light, haven't they? They basically have agreed with you that this is immoral, it is wrong. You know, we are condemning these poor little dogs to, as I say, literally a fate worse than death. It's better to die than what happens to them in these laboratories. So in America, at least in Virginia, they agreed with you. They released 4,000 beagles. Fantastic. Why are we still doing this here?
Well, that's a great question, but it wasn't easy in Virginia, and it still happens.
It was.
Yeah, it wasn't easy, and it's still happening all over the United States. So, you know, we definitely want to bring that message here and make it clear, and we're hoping that can actually happen quickly, because you know, we were over at MBR Acres the other day, and we heard those screams of the beagles. It was horrific. You know, it took the public's action The United States Department of Agriculture is responsible for overseeing the animals in those laboratories, and they had cited so many violations inside that laboratory, but nothing had been done. It took the public to take action and say something's got to be done, and for lawsuits to be filed in order to close that place down. That's where we came in and took action. And so that's what needs to happen here, is that people need to stand up and take action and do something.
And so the other aspect to this, of course, and this is why I think the whole kind of Beagle experiment edifice is beginning to crumble, is there's no justification for these experiments, is there? Because establishing that something might be poisonous or toxic for a dog doesn't necessarily establish that it's poisonous or toxic for a human being. So it's kind of pointless, isn't it?
Correct. Yeah, exactly. And in fact, it's usually the opposite. There have been so many drugs released on the market that have ended up hurting and sometimes killing human beings. However, they prove safe on animals.
Yeah, and don't we in this country, we have laws whereby before products can be sold, they have to be subjected to animal experimentation, don't we? So it's enshrined in our laws that we have to be cruel to these dogs. That's ridiculous, isn't it?
It's absurd. Well, what's interesting here in the UK is that it seems that you have an option here that if there's a viable alternative, right, that you don't have to test on animals.
But that's all a bit of a farce. The NAMs, the non-animal methods, are out there. They can be used. We've recently set up a petition that's had 100,000 signatures to date, and moving up as well. thecampbeagle.com, if people would like to go to thecampbeagle.com, we have a petition asking for the government to debate this. Why aren't you using the non-animal methods that are in place? The problem we have here is that the vivisection industry in this country is lucrative and secretive.
Yeah, and let's just reiterate what I was saying earlier, Shannon, that let's talk about these poor little dogs' fate. I mean, they are literally bred to be experimented on. So they're born in these canine concentration camps.
Yes.
They're kept in conditions where, dogs, they need love and they need attention. They don't have any love, they don't have any attention. The only thing that happens to them in their 16 weeks before they get carted off to the laboratories is that they get sort of prepared by having to put paper cups across their faces so they're ready for gas masks, and they take lots of injections so they don't worry too much when the experiments happen. So that's what they do, and then at 16 weeks they're put into crates, taken to laboratories where they're experimented upon. How can we do this?
It's shocking. How can we call people human beings?
It's disgusting.
They're known by a tattoo in their ear. They don't have names. They're taken away from their mothers. They're literally grown up in a cage. They never see the sunshine. Look at the tattoo and Scarlett's ear.
Faded, and Scarlett is extremely stoic. But she's compliant also. That's her training. She's not naughty. She doesn't do naughty things because she's been trained. She's been brutally trained to take what is coming. Like you said, Kevin, give me a paw or you'll get punched. And then the injection and the gavage, the tube down the throat.
And I think I'm right, Shannon, that so MBR Acres, which is the company that specialises in this horrific trade, it's an American company, but it's probably the most thriving institution right now is in Cambridgeshire, just outside Huntingdon, where they have a huge unit, sort of Beagle farm, if you like, and they're doing very nicely in America, or in Britain rather, and they get, I think they get £4,000 a dog or something like that.
Sure, yeah, and it's the same in the United States. They get a lot of money by selling these beagles, and so really it's all about the bottom dollar, and unfortunately the public doesn't really know, and that's why it's so great that you're putting us on the show and we're talking about this publicly, because people don't know that this happens. It's the industry's dirty little secret.
Yeah. And I want to stress that to all the viewers and the listeners to Talk TV. This is happening in our country right now. This is happening in Cambridgeshire. It's a big, thriving industry. Animals are, poor little beagles, are specifically bred, so they're born in order to be prepared for experiments. That's their entire life. 16 weeks in a canine concentration camp, being softened up for gas masks, needles and the knife, then off to a experimental laboratory where they are experimented upon and treated like not as if they're even sort of living beings, really. They're just commodities.
Exactly, not at all. And what they like to say, what those technicians like to say is, well, they were bred for this. They're not bred to be household animals and companions.
They shouldn't be bred for this. That's the point, isn't
it? Exactly. Look at Scarlett, really? She's not bred to be in somebody's arms, in somebody's home.
She really is.
That's what they tell themselves, and that's what they tell the public if they're ever caught with this. And then we caught them, and that's what we're doing, and we're exposing it. It needs to end.
Yeah. And when you do negotiate dogs out like you did with Scarlett, you have to do a kind of, I mean, I'm not blaming you at all, but you have to kind of deal with the devil, don't you? That in order to take the dogs, you have to sort of agree not to say how they got there or who the villains of the piece are. So you have to concede, or you have to make a pact that you'd rather not in order to save the dogs. I understand it, obviously.
We do sometimes, yeah, sometimes we do, and it is really difficult. It's walking that fine line between saving the dogs and exposing the facility. So, yeah, believe me, I've dealt a toss and turn many a night with how do we do this.
So you must have had a lot of dealings with the people who are involved in this horrible industry. I mean, they can't all be completely heartless. Do they not see the awfulness of the trade they're involved in?
They are brainwashed to believe that this is what they call a quote-unquote necessary evil. And so they think that this is absolutely necessary to save lives.
But it's not, though, is it?
No, it's not.
And also, that philosophically, you could argue, you know, and I would probably take this viewpoint. You know, it's all God's creatures. You can't sort of say, well, these creatures are far less important than these other creatures, so therefore it's perfectly justified to do horrific things for them, because whilst they'll suffer the most appalling fate, literally mutilated, humanity will benefit.
Well, it's the reason why we're able to get so many out, because we have so many people who work inside those facilities and call us and say, this is actually horrible, these dogs shouldn't die, because there are so many tests that are being done that don't really do anything that harm those dogs, let's just say, where they have to be killed afterwards, and they end up killing them anyway, and call us to say, can you please just get them out, figure out a way to get them out. We're desperate. So we have a lot of people who work inside and get them out for us.
And we should stress that the reason the Beagles are specifically chosen for this task is that as a breed, they're very docile, they're very trusting, they do what they're told, which makes it even worse, really, doesn't it? We abuse the fact that they're such lovely dogs, you know, who just want to be helpful.
Exactly. And that's exactly what they say.
Yeah.
They're the perfect size for cages, too, is what they say.
So how can people get in touch with your organisation and find out what you're doing and find out all about MBR Acres in Cambridgeshire?
That'd be great. They could go to our website, which is at bfpuk.org, bfpuk.org, and then...
BFP UK, all one word?
Yes.
.org.
And
then from the UK side, thecampbeagle.com.
The Camp Beagle. Is that all one word as well?
Yeah, thecampbeagle.com. Wonderful website. You can sign the petition, donate, all sorts of things.
Okay, so let's get that right again. It's bfpuk.org. All one word, bfpuk.org. Or thecampbeagle.com. So I think everyone should have a look at that, and I don't think this should be happening. What chance, Shannon, do you think that on both sides of the Atlantic that your campaign will finally completely succeed and they won't do this to poor little dogs like Scarlett ever again? How close are we to that point, or are we indeed close to it?
I think we're very close. We're moving in that direction. Yeah, I really have hope.
Now you're talking. Go on.
We're so close. We're getting there. There's so much public awareness now, and especially with the closure of Vigo and Cumberland, Virginia, people are hearing and seeing what's going on with these animals, and we're ready to do something bigger.
Yeah, so once again, I'm going to reiterate this again, stress it again. This is happening right now in Cambridgeshire, in Huntingdon. There's a place there where they breed dogs, specially, little beagles like Scarlett, specially so they can be experimented on, ripped up, mutilated, just so perfume can work and that kind of nonsense. It really is not acceptable. But it's very nice to meet Scarlett, who's completely underwhelmed by this entire experience, isn't she?
Oh, Harry and Meghan.
Yes, and we do have the
Harry and
support
Meghan.
of Harry and Meghan as well.
Well, there you go.
They adopted an Invigo Beagle from us.
Did they?
They did, yes. They came to our headquarters in Los Angeles, California.
I didn't know that. Excellent.
And they adopted a mother beagle from Beagle Freedom Project. And so, and their point also was to tell the world that this is wrong.
Well, we have issues with Harry and Meghan sometimes, but on this, on this, good for them. Good for them. And thank you so much, Janie Elizabeth, Shannon Keith, and of course Scarlett the Beagle for coming on in. Great to see you. Thank you very much.